Hello and welcome to my video on naming compounds. We're going to learn how to name these different kinds of compounds today. And the first thing you need to do when you're naming a compound is to decide what kind of compound it is, because they have different rules. So an ionic compound or a covalent compound, those are the two kinds that we can have. The fastest way to figure out if it's ionic or covalent is to look at the kind of element that's in the compound. So if you have a metal and a nonmetal, then that's ionic. If you have nonmetal and nonmetal, then that is covalent. Ms. Smith, how do I know if it's metal or nonmetal? Good question. You look at your periodic table, here it is, and you can match up the different colors, but the fast way to do it is to look at this little staircase right here. Those are the semimetals or the metalloids. So everything on this side of that staircase, so below the staircase, is going to be metal, except for hydrogen, and everything on this side or above the staircase is nonmetal, except for hydrogen. So all of these over here, metals, hydrogen is a nonmetal, and all of these over here are nonmetals. So if you have one from over here and one from over here, that's going to be ionic. If you have two from over here, that's going to be covalent. If you have one from over here and then hydrogen, that's going to be covalent. So that's how you can figure that out. And then we have our different rules on how we can name them. But I'm going to go ahead and write down which kind of compound this is so I can keep that in my head. So I have lithium and I have oxygen. So here's lithium and here's oxygen. So I have a metal contained in this compound, so it has to be ionic. This one I have nitrogen and oxygen. So here's nitrogen and here's oxygen, both nonmetals, so that is going to be covalent. And I'm going to keep that in mind when I talk about how I'm naming them. So if I'm naming an ionic compound, it's pretty easy, nothing crazy. You just name the cation, which is the first one, then you name the anion, but you change the ending to "ide," unless it's a polyatomic ion. I'll go ahead and say, if you're watching this in November of 2024, I am not going to give you one with a polyatomic ion. If this is another class, I have absolutely no idea what the future holds. Don't have a crystal ball. But regardless, November 2024, I'm not going to give you one for this test that we're about to have. Okay, so let's do that for the first one. I name my cation, which is the first one, which is lithium. So I'm going to write that down. Lithium. And then I name my second one, or my anion, which is oxygen. But I need to change my ending to "ide," so it becomes oxide. So lithium oxide is the name of this compound. And you'll notice with this ionic compound, it doesn't matter that I have a 2 there. That doesn't change anything about the name. That's going to be important when we talk about covalent. So here's how you name a covalent compound. You name the first element, and you need to look at that first element and to decide, does it have a subscript? So if you have something that looks like this, the first element, carbon, does not have a subscript. If you have no subscript, it means 1. So that means if you have no subscript, you're going to use no prefix, only for the first element. But if you had something like the one that we have over here in 2, that does have a subscript. So we're going to need to use a prefix. And here's our prefixes that we're going to use. So mono is for 1 or none, depending on if it's the first element or not. For 2, we use di, 3 is tri, 4 is tetra, 5 is penta. It goes on after that, but I'm not going to give you one that goes past penta. So once you do that, once you name that first element, which I'm going to go ahead and do, I have N2. So that is nitrogen. And I have a subscript, so I need to use a prefix, and the prefix I'm going to use is di because it's N2. So I'm going to write that, dinitrogen. Okay, my second step after this, I follow my little arrows down here. It says name second element, always use prefix, change ending to "ide." So that means even if I had, well, I actually think the example is going to show you that. So always use a prefix. That means even if I had 1, I'm going to use mono. I'm going to use di, tetra, tri, whatever it is, depending on what the subscript is. So I go back over here and I look at oxygen, and I have no subscript. But remember, no subscript means 1. I just have one of those oxygens. So I always have to use a prefix for that second element. So that means I'm going to use mono. I'll go ahead and write that down. That's my prefix. And then I have to remember, change my ending to "ide." So it's not monooxygen, it's monoxide. Yay, we named them. Okay, so we're gonna do the other ones. I have more practice on the back. Very exciting. Okay, so here's one. Strontium and chlorine. I need to decide if that's ionic or covalent, so I know which rules to follow. So I find strontium, that's a metal, has to be ionic. It doesn't even matter what the next one is. The next one has to be non-metal because you can't have two metals bonded together. So if you have a metal and a non-metal, which I do, chlorine, that's going to be ionic. So we follow our ionic rules, which means we name the first one strontium. And we name the anion, the second one, and change our ending to "ide." So chlorine becomes chloride. Yay! The next one, we have carbon and we have chlorine. Carbon is right here, chlorine is right here. Those are both non-metals. So that means that this is a covalent compound. So I need to follow my covalent rules. I'm going to name my first element, and I need to know if it has no prefix or if it has a prefix. So I look back over here and I look at carbon. Carbon has no prefix, or I'm sorry, no subscript. So if I have no subscript, that means 1. So when I'm going back over here, I'm going to follow this arrow instead and say no prefix. So I don't need a prefix at all on this one. So that's why this one can be kind of confusing. Sometimes you need a prefix on that first element, sometimes you don't. You always need a prefix on the second element no matter what. So it says name, second element, always use prefix, change ending to "ide." So I have chlorine, and I have 4 of them. So I need to go back and look at my prefixes. The prefix for 4 is tetra. So I'll write that down. Tetra. And then chlorine, but I need to change my ending to "ide." So it's tetrachloride. The end. Wonderful. We named them. And you will notice when you are looking at these, so if you don't look at these and you're just looking at these, the ionic ones will never have prefixes. The covalent ones will always have at least 1 prefix. So tetra, tri, di, whatever it is. Same thing for the one on the back. If I don't look at these, this one, ionic, there's no prefixes. There's nothing in front of lithium, there's nothing in front of oxide. This one is covalent. We have 2 prefixes now. We have di and we have mono. So that's going to be helpful in our next video when I talk about going backwards when you have a name and then you need to give me the formula. So smash that subscribe button, smash that like button. Thank you for watching my super fun video. Bye!